Kael'thas Sunstrider, Crown Prince of Kael'thas, hero of Warcraft 3, and later one of the most infamous raid bosses in the Burning Crusade. His story is a cocktail of tragedy, corruption, redemption, and depending on who you ask, inconsistency. Like Illidan, Kael went from sympathetic anti-hero to loot pinata, only to later be recontextualized in Shadowlands. So today, let's explore Kael'thas' journey from Warcraft 3 to WoW, and ask, was he always destined to fall, or was his story bent and broken to fit Blizzard's boss first, lore later philosophy? So Kael'thas was born the Crown Prince of Kael'thas. He's son of King Anasterion and leader of the High Elves after Arthas and the Scourge tore through Silvermoon. In the Frozen Throne, Kael is forced into impossible circumstances. His people are reeling from devastation, their connection to the Sunwell is severed, and their very identity is in crisis. So to catch you up, Kael leads his people to ally with Lady Vash and the Naga, ultimately throwing in with Illidan Stormrage, not because he's evil, but because desperation pushes him to embrace unlikely allies. Warcraft 3 depicts Kael as pragmatic, intelligent, and noble, but also impulsive and reckless. He's willing to compromise honor for survival, which makes him compelling, but also sets him up for contradictions down the road. And mentioning his past, let's not forget the Jaina factor. In Warcraft 3 manuals and some campaign dialogue, Kael was in love with Jaina Proudmoore and cared for her deeply, but she chose Arthas instead, which, in hindsight, is being passed over for someone who later became Warcraft's mass-murdering Death Knight. So, no wonder the man developed trust issues. But when Burning Crusade launched, Kael made his shocking return. But instead of the pragmatic prince from Warcraft 3, we meet a villain. In Tempest Keep, Kael is positioned as one of the expansion's central raid bosses, of course allied with the Burning Legion. So this is where the first big inconsistency appears. In Warcraft 3, Kael swore loyalty to Illidan. He followed him through Outland and stood by his side. Yet in BC, suddenly he betrays Illidan and serves Kil'jaeden, with no real explanation beyond corruption. Blizzard then leaned heavily on Kael's mana addiction to justify the heel turn, portraying him as a fell addict tyrant enslaving his own people, but it doesn't really fit the Kael we saw in Warcraft 3. He was addicted, sure, but not brainless. The truth is, Kael's lore in BC feels shaped less by character consistency and more by Blizzard's need for a raid boss. He was simply too important to leave out, so they bent the story to make him fit. Now, within the same expansion, if Tempest Keep's Kael felt inconsistent, Magister's Terrace doubled down. After his defeat, Kael inexplicably returns, even more erratic. Players storm the terrace on the Isle, where Kael rants, raves, and just descends into outright delusion before being put down again. This clashes with his Warcraft 3 origins again. Kael in Warcraft 3 was passionate, stubborn, occasionally reckless, but he was never unhinged. By TBC's end, he became almost a parody of himself. The noble prince turned into a Saturday morning cartoon villain. It is another example of Blizzard's boss first, lore later approach, because Kael wasn't written to have a natural downfall, he was written to justify a raid and a dungeon. His arc twisted to serve gameplay rather than story. What I'm kind of trying to get at is that he didn't have a proper evolution. There's no A to B to C. We went from A, Warcraft 3, to C, TBC. Anyway, in everybody's favourite expansion, years later, he returns in Shadowlands. Not as a boss, but as a character seeking redemption. In Revendreth, Kael is confronted with the sins of his past, his pride, his betrayals, and his failures. But here, Blizzard reframes him. Instead of a mad tyrant drunk on fell power, Kael is portrayed as a tragic soul who lost his way under impossible pressures. Shadowlands leans into his Warcraft 3 persona, proud, noble, and willing to sacrifice everything for his people. It suggests that Kael was manipulated, broken by desperation, and consumed by forces beyond his control, also known as the Blizzard storywriters, but rather than just simply being a power-hungry traitor. Arguably, this kind of looks like a retcon, and it almost feels like Blizzard is putting a bandage over TBC's caricature, softening him into a flawed, redeemable hero. And honestly, it works. Shadowlands did give Kael dignity again, reminding us of why we cared about him back in Warcraft 3. So what do we make of Kael'thas? His arc mirrors Illidan's in so many ways. Both were complex, both were flawed characters in Warcraft 3, both reduced to raid bosses in WoW, and both were then later redeemed in expansions that recontextualized their stories. But Kael's inconsistencies stand out. If he was truly corrupted, why emphasize his redemption in Shadowlands? If he was truly loyal to Illidan, why betray him in BC? Was Kael ever meant to be a villain? Or was he simply rewritten to serve as content? The thing is, Kael is both one of Warcraft's most inconsistent characters, and one of its most compelling. His tragedy isn't just that he fell, it's that his story was bent and broken along the way. And maybe in the end, that inconsistency is his legacy. Kael'thas, the prince who loved too deeply, lost too greatly, and was rewritten too often. Kael's story mirrors Warcraft storytelling itself. Epic, tragic, and occasionally nonsensical. He is not the consistent noble prince some of us wanted, like the Lich King, nor the purely villainous tyrant Blizzard painted in the Burning Crusade. He's both and neither. So, what do you think? Was Kael'thas always destined to fall into villainy? Or was he another casualty of Blizzard's raid-first storytelling? Let me know down below, and thank you so much for watching. I really enjoyed making this one. Please do have a lovely day.